Tiptoe around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. The back row living in his White House. So many stories that I need to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. So many stories right in front of me. Some people climb to heights I've never seen. Too many falling down off their feet. These stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Why you're the way you are. Tiptoe around with face of a stranger. Quiet observer, never get too close. I see the world, but it's through this window. Another side to see, I'm ready to know. Not every story's written on a sleeve. Some stories take digging deep. Eyes wide open, words unspoken. Where are you going, darling? Where have you been? Stories to tell, emotions we felt, good and the bad in the hands we've been dealt. I wanna know why, I wanna know why you're the way you are. He's from the city, she's from the south. Two different chapters told miles out. The back row living in his White House.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Silverline Live Wednesday Night Wham. We are live with the new host, Scott Wakefield. Things have changed, and Sydney had to drop out for the foreseeable future, but Scott is now taking over as our bearded leader. Oh, let me make sure my audio settings have changed, so I need to put in a new audio source really quick. Not quite yet. All right, and that.
That was a great start, Scott.
There we go. Yes, now they can hear you.
Take two. Hello.
All right,
everyone.
start over.
Wait, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
It is Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Wham with an exclamation mark. We are here to discuss all things comic books, but our topic for tonight is how movies influence our craft and how they influence comic book making. And we have a group of illustrious experts here to discuss how movies do affect them while they are.
Oh, I signed into the wrong cast then. Experts.
And arting.
I was trying to sign into the novelist podcast.
I was signing into the mediocre level.
I'm sorry. And we will get right into introductions. And I asked them to think of a movie that they just as a way to get to know everybody here. They're going to tell us who they are and how they are involved with Silverline. But then they're going to tell us one of their favorite movies and why. It doesn't have to be the favorite movie, as if anybody really has a favorite movie, but one of their favorites and why, and a movie they hated and why. And my lineup here, I'm going to start right with Tim. You are first in line.
Hello, I am Tim TK. I am the producer for Wednesday Night Wham, as well as the associate editor at Silverline. I help work on the website stuff, including our craft blog series. I'm also editing a title and writing a title, which I think we can announce now. But I do have a favorite movie because I see maybe 2 movies a year. And that is Redline, the animated movie, which is just insane. It's I don't know how to describe it besides superpowered cars, bounty hunters, death race in a pseudo-fascist technopunk planet. It's great. Also, neo-funk background tracks. It's all sorts of weird and wacky thrown together, but the overarching plot line is very human. It's a love story as well as a kind of a dream come true self-realization story, all wrapped up in all this wackiness put together. But it's this very core human emotional experience. Most disliked or hated movie is Meet the Spartans, which was just atrocious. As someone who enjoyed the 300 comic, that was a nightmare.
And that was a spoof on that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It was probably a spoof on the movie.
It was yeah.
Huh.
All right. Is that it?
That's it. That's all I got.
Right. Thank you, Tim. And next on my screen here, I got Mr. Thomas Florimonte.
Yeah, I am a comic book creator. I've been around from the early 90s. I've worked for pretty much everybody at one point or the other. I am currently I'm inking for Silverline a book called Trumps, based off the card game. Well, it's sort of based off the card. It's got the cards are in it, that kind of thing. That's how it's based off the card game. Anyway, you guys will see it more and more as we get September is when it's going to be released. But anyway, I'm co-owner of the company called Kablam Digital Printing. We print pretty much lots and lots of books for everybody. But my favorite movie is it's on my hat. I love the Star Wars movies. I just love them all since I was little. Which one? I like them all. Of course, I like The New Hope. But Empire's good. I like all of them. It's just I'm a big Star Wars crazy person. I'm really easy to get for Christmas. Just in case if anybody out there wants to buy me something, just buy me something Star Wars. It doesn't matter what it is. I like Star Wars stuff, but I love the Star Wars movies. Now, on the flip side of it, some of my worst movies is the first 3 Star Warses. They're not that great, but I still love them. So I don't know. I'll watch anything. So I'm a big zombie kind of fan. So any of the cheesiest zombie movies, I'll sit and watch them. But as far as that goes, I don't dislike anything. I'll watch anything. I'll pay my money. I'll sit there through the whole movie and just go, man, I just wasted 2 hours of my life and $10. But at least I got some popcorn.
Right.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So Star Wars. There you go.
And I think with Star Wars, it's like when you love Star Wars, you love something so much, the expectation is so much higher. So for 1, 2, and 3.
The first 3 for me, I mean, I guess we'll get into talking about all the stuff a little later. It was just that it was too busy. Busy body going on with stuff that we didn't care anything about. I mean, it looked neat, but it was just too much dumb junk that nobody cared anything about.
After I watched Star Wars Episode 6, my dad got me into the novels, and Star Wars existed in them books for me from then on. The movies have been trailers.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about all this stuff in a little bit, but I've got my reasons why I think people like the certain parts of the Star Wars movies. It depends on when you grew up and when you watched them. Little kids like those set and this set, and the new kids like the current set, which, but anyway, there we go. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome.
Next, I've got Alex. He is penciling there on what I see. You want to say hello? Tell us what you're doing?
Yes, I am penciling a page for Cat and Mouse. My name is Alex Gallimore, and I guess a movie. I'll start with the movie I hate. Movie I hate or dislike is the theatrical cut of Justice League that came out a couple years ago. That movie I felt like I wasted money on, for sure.
Which movie?
Justice League.
Oh,
yeah, that one. A movie I love is the most current Mission Impossible movie. I've probably seen it a couple times now.
Nice.
It's just the shots in that movie are just amazing.
Fun.
All the action is great.
Henry Cavill reloading his biceps.
I love when he pounds his chest.
Yes.
All set, Alex?
Yes,
Thank you.
That's all.
All right. Brent, you are up next.
Right. I agree with you. I hesitate to say I have a favorite movie because I'll make all the other movies jealous, but I actually see a lot of movies. In fact, I had the Regal Unlimited pass, and I would go as much as my schedule allowed. I just love the movies. And but I also wanted to pick something that wasn't as obvious because everyone's seen Gladiator and everybody's seen The Avengers. I saw The Avengers 5 times in a theater, I think.
Yes.
Probably my biggest, most attended film. But I choose for my favorite film the movie Unbreakable, which I loved for several reasons, but thematically, it being the story of a man who's trying to find his purpose. I was at a point in my life when I really kind of felt that intimately, and for that reason, it really just kind of spoke to me. And the best movies do that, I think. Even if it's trying to tell me something I don't believe, I still appreciate it being about something. I hate movies that are about nothing, which leads to my one of my most hated films. I wanted to do Batman versus Superman, but it just seemed so obvious. Instead, I'm going to go with a film that actually some people really like. It's called Old School.
No.
With Jack Black?
Nope.
That's School of Rock.
That's School of Rock, which was pretty good.
Yeah, School of Rock was pretty good. School of Rock was good. Old School was about a bunch of guys who were post-college and lamenting their lives, and they decided to start a fraternity.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
It sounds like a good premise, but basically, I was all set up to see this kind of. I love raucous comedy type stuff, but the best comedies really have something to say. And what I thought they were going to talk about was how men have a tendency to want to look back on their lives and go back to the simpler times, but when they really embrace the life they have now, that they can really start to move forward as people. And they were like, yeah, no, that's dumb. Let's just throw some boobs at people and then basically just have them like utter jackasses and it's okay. I just remember being so disappointed. I was like, you guys had such an opportunity to say something interesting, and basically what you said was nothing. So sad. So I'll never see that one again. Right. I might turn on Batman versus Superman just because I want to see Superman get hit with a car again. But
yeah,
old school really has nothing for me. So.
Martha.
Thank you for that. And Brent, you didn't tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Yes.
And doing.
Actually, I'm nobody. I'm just crashing this. Hey, Mom. No, my name is Brent Larson. I am the creator.
You found the link and just joined.
Yeah.
I created and wrote the book Kalis, which I am excited to say issue 3 is very close to being done. So, oh yeah.
Right. Thank you, sir. All right, and then next in my line, I've got C. Michael Lanning. Go ahead.
All right, I'm C. Michael Lanning. I'm a pencilist for Silverline and currently working on a character design for a new miniseries. This took all day for me to think about it, but I would say I don't know if anybody remembers like from the 90s, but Dark City.
See, Michael, you're kind of sounding like a robot.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Try again.
How's that?
There we go.
Can you hear me? All right.
It's a little better.
The little bit. Movie that I liked was Dark City, which was kind of it was noir type of movie, but it was by the same person that did The Crow, and it had the way that they used the darks and the lights and everything, kind of the filmography, and it was really impressive to me. And even the story, it was kind of like an alien race that was experimenting on a set of people, and they would change their memories at night. So they would be somebody different the next morning, and they would kind of observing them. But there was one guy that was some kind of resistant to it. It's an old mid-90s movie. And then one movie that I hate that probably caused some controversy is Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
I cannot stand the Wizard of Oz, especially after I read the books. And I'm somebody that grew up with Return to Oz, so that was closer to the books for me than Wizard of Oz was. I cannot stand the Green Witch. That bugs me to this day. So, that's what I got.
And next, I'll introduce Dan. This is Dan's first time on the Silverline stream. Dan is my partner with a magazine I do, and he's also coloring and lettering Steam Patriots. And I'll say, take it away, Dan.
Yeah, just try to give a little brief bio. I worked at Marvel as an assistant editor in the mid-90s, and just kind of been around comics. I loved comics from when I was a kid and just was always part of it. And then once I worked at Marvel for a little bit, I actually fell out of comics, but I always wanted to make them. So I think in I think it was 2014, 2015, I self-published 3 issues of a comic called File 13. Still want to do stuff, which is why I was happy when Scott asked me to be part of the project he's on and to kind of come up with other ideas and pitch things around. So I always love to create. I have 1,000 ideas, so it's nice to have an avenue to kind of channel them through and try and get them out there. As far as movie I love, definitely Empire Strikes Back. I think it's my favorite. I think it was the first movie I ever saw where the good guys got hurt, and it let me see that the good guys have been beaten very, very badly, and it could still be a great movie and even a better movie than when they win, because I think that's important to the development of characters, is that they struggle to get to where they need to be. And for a movie I hate, probably The Happening by M. Night Shyamalan. It's just a movie, like, I know I've heard people say like it's bad because he wanted it to be bad, kind of be an homage to like all the bad movies, but there's like other movies that do that well. Like I think Ed Wood does. It kind of picks up on like the cues and like the visual kind of feel of the bad movies that Ed Wood made without being a bad movie. I think it's a really good movie, but it kind of has a weird kind of tilted, not so great look to it, but it's done on purpose. Whereas The Happening, I think, was just a really bad movie.
I wholeheartedly agree that was on my list. I thought maybe I'd talk about that one, but
sorry if I stole that from you, Scott.
That's okay. That's all right. Agreed. That's a horrible movie.
I was gonna say, and tonight I'll be reading the chat and responding to all of you on the Silverline pages. This one is for C. Michael. Christina Lynn on YouTube says Eric Weathers has a comic on Indiegogo called Battle Brick Road. It's like a sci-fi Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple times where they'll do something different with it. I don't mind. I think there was like a sci-fi show called Tin Man years ago, and kind of like Tin Man was a term for a sheriff or something like that. I didn't really see it. It was okay, but I'm such a Wizard of Oz person. I'm such an Oz, Frank L. Baum and all that, or L. Frank Baum. But it's I guess I'm a traditionalist in that sense.
Sure.
Scotty Young and Marvel actually did a really neat comic series on it, and they kind of captured that look that he was going for. So I kind of geared towards that traditional sense of him. So.
Okay, and Alex
That makes sense.
Alex Sarabia on Facebook asks, "Does anybody like horror movies, or is it just me?" And yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tend to. I found that I like when they're like a PG-13 horror movie.
A little silly on the silly side.
No, more on the cerebral, less visual gore.
Yeah.
Like, I like to think about it. I like to not see the villain or the
like a good psychological thriller. I like
exactly.
that. Although I do, if it's not like a AAA style like slasher film, but if it's like old school slaughterhouse indie like Belko Experiment, something like that, where it's just we got 12 guys on cast and $5,000 and one room. How do we kill them all?
Yeah. Anyone else on the horror?
It's not my thing. I don't know. It's never has been. I don't go out of my way to see them. I don't go out of my way not to see them. But it's just never been. Except for like Alien. I love Alien, the first Alien movie.
Yeah.
Maybe sci-fi horror is something I'm more into than like the straight up slasher kind of stuff. You know, it's never. I don't know. It just never appealed to me.
Sure.
I love all
like horror movies. Oh, go ahead, Brent.
Wait. Oh, yeah, I love them. The Shining is one of my all-time favorites. The Conjuring was great. I actually saw a film. It's hard for me to recommend because there's some rough content in it, but it's not a slasher film. It's Midsommar, came out last year. The director's name is Ari Aster. A year or two before that, he did a movie called Hereditary. And they are some of the psychologically creepiest films I've ever seen. And they are incredibly well put together. And they had something to say, too, which, like I said earlier, is something that's important to me. But, yeah, I've had friends say, I can't unsee that movie. Thanks a lot, Brian. Apologize, and we move on. But, yeah. Yeah, I love it all. Plus, I love The Ring. The Grudge was not a good movie, and yet I just couldn't help but enjoy it. You know, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's all there.
So I didn't introduce myself. I'm Scott Wakefield. I think I said that. But I am writing. I'm the co-creator and co-writer with my buddy Rory Boyle. of Steam Patriots, which will be coming out sometime soon from Silverline, which Dan is coloring and lettering. The art is from David Mims. And I'm also helping with publicity for Silverline. So as our next projects come out, I will be helping to get the word out with those. Movie-wise, for me, there's a movie that I love and I rewatch every couple of years called Children of Men. Did anybody?
Oh,
Yes.
awesome
Great movie.
Real sleeper. At least I didn't hear anything about it. I found it on DVD, and I love stories of the hero against all odds. I love those, and I thought the cinematography, the filming, the long shots just kept the tension going. That there's a 12 or 13 minute one shot at the end where they're going through a blown out kind of apartment building, and the military is coming in, or the police, and there's a tank, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And the first time I saw it, I didn't know the first time I saw it that there was no cut until I saw it again. But the tension was there. I could feel it, and that's great filmmaking. I was drawn in, and I was clenched, and something needed to relieve the tension. So I've enjoyed that movie a lot. Great acting, a bleak landscape to match the world of the story world. So that's one of my favorites. And then I am a nitpicker with movies, so there are so many that are probably okay movies, but they so The Happening, yes, but to stick with the comic book theme, Fantastic Four 2 with the Silver Surfer.
Oh wow, yeah.
It was they should have called it the Four Stooges, because it was like, how can we make it silly when Mr. Fantastic has all their powers, and he's at a nightclub doing his thing, his stretchy thing, and just so dumb. I almost unwatchable. And it's one that I liked the first one. The first one was slow, but I thought, it's a good character building, story building, beginning to the Fantastic Four story for the movies. And then number 2 came along, and I was done. I wanted my money back. I did watch it to the end, but that one was a real letdown.
We got Oven on the comments. He says, what Silverline book do you feel if they were adapted into a film? Would it be better as a TV series or movie trilogy? He says he thinks Kalis would be an amazing TV series, for example. It has a lot of things he'd like to have sort of that long sort of space of time to delve into.
Oh yeah.
And I agree. Kalis as a TV series would be fantastic.
I think it's got a great TV protagonist. It's got the feel that they could do a great job with episodic stories of Kalis.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, I agree. Frankly, I don't know how you would do it in a movie.
Right.
It's I have stuff lined up and in my mind for the next few years that the idea of doing it, of truncating the story, is almost physically painful to me. I don't want to have to consider the idea of doing that.
It's an older title that we're re-releasing, I believe, called Cray. I think that'd be a good movie because it is set up just for that, like 2 hours of sort of, this is the story, this is the action, set up for maybe something in the future. But it's I think it'd be kind of it's kind of like our take on Conan. I enjoy that as a movie.
It'd be a good Netflix movie.
Yeah,
you'd be able to make it with not a huge budget, but it would be able to get approach from Netflix, and
I love the long format now, and I feel like that's the future of movies. Maybe not all of them. You know, to have that cinema experience is great, but to be able to tell the story, not in 2 hours or even a trilogy, but over multiple seasons. I love the potential. Recently, Netflix redid a series of unfortunate events.
What?
The Lemony Snicket books from
Yeah.
almost 20 years ago.
Tommy, I think you got some background noise.
And the Jim Carrey movie came out quite a while ago, and they mashed 3 books together and made it a 2-hour movie, and it didn't do it justice. But Netflix did 13 books in 25 episodes, and it was great. It was great, and I loved the books. And my kids read the books, and then we all watched the Netflix series, and they changed a little to make it fit the visual format, but they did a great job, and I love that. I love the potential, because now I'm reading stories, or I see a comic book or a novel, and I think they could turn this into a great series.
Yeah.
So I love the potential for that.
Certain ideas, I think, just lend themselves better to, like, I think a great example is I know some people love the Highlander movies. I'm not a huge fan of the Highlander movie, but I did like the TV series, because I think it lends itself better to the idea of someone that's been alive for 500 years and all the different things he's done.
Yeah.
Flashbacks, you could kind of explore that a lot deeper than you could in a 2-hour movie.
I like the first one.
I enjoyed
that. Kind of.
Yeah, and also they did a animated Highlander movie, which I enjoyed.
Wow.
Was that the one that was in the future? I never saw that.
Yes. It got modern day-ish near future. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
classic 80s.
And I'm sorry, my video keeps dropping out. It's just I think I can't do anything else while I'm doing this, because I wanted to go look at something, and then I was like, everything crashed and went away on me. So I just won't do anything else except this while.
Okay.
Until I can figure out what's going on.
You might be moving too fast too, Dan. Slow down.
I don't know. I just got to slow it down.
I had some questions, some topics to keep us rolling, and one of my first questions was, do you guys have any styles, some movie styles that influence you when for the writers, for plotting and visual, as we write and visualize it, and then for the artists to draw from? When I say styles, I mean, like, there are the obvious ones, like all the Wes Anderson movies have bright colors, and I don't know if they all are, or at least most of them, they're 90 degrees, they're perpendicular almost every shot, and there's a lot of side scrolling and panning up and down, and that sort of thing. So is there a movie style that you're drawn to, that you like to use? And does that question make sense?
Yeah, I can start off that if people are thinking, but
Yeah.
my natural thought is always to pop into something like Blade Runner, where it's kind of a lot of mid shots with a lot of detail and a lot of world in it. Lots of kind of pointing to lighting or time of day and how that would play on a character and where they'd be presented. Or if I'm popping into an action scene really quick, I might think of something like The Raid or Ip Man, or some sort of kung fu movie, or just a movie with very kinetic details where it's just you really wanting to demonstrate the kinetic power of each blow.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, when I first started out, I always thought I was going to be a comic artist. I loved drawing as a kid. I drew all the way up through college, and then I fell into editorial at Marvel. But in college, I took an intro to film course, and I never really thought about framing shots and framing things interestingly. And then they talked about Citizen Kane and just the framing of that, and like how every shot of Kane, or almost every shot of Kane, is like shot up so he looks powerful, and when he's talking to other people, they're always shot down on so they look weak and small. And like there's actually parts where they ripped floorboards up so they could get the camera as low as possible. So it was such an extreme upshot of Kane. So he always looked imposing and powerful, and that like kind of really really influenced the idea of like what you can do visually just to display power without even someone throwing a punch, and if it's a superhero comic, it's just the angle and what you're doing with the angles that can really convey power or weakness or sadness or happiness. That was pretty eye-opening just from that standpoint for me.
Has anyone seen 1917?
Not yet. It's on my to watch list.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I think it's now top 10, top 5 war movies for me. And the way that there was so much close-up, there were the close-ups of the hero, the two of them, their faces, and there's so much told in his expressions and his the ups and downs and the urgency of the whole movie is urgent, and I think that's fantastic. And I've been thinking about that, the facial expressions, and as a writer, I can't do that because I can't draw, but I can, impart that to artists and say, yeah, we want that immediacy, that intimacy of what their expressions are saying. So I love that movie. I want to watch it 2, 3, 4, 5 more times because I think it's fantastic cinematography all the way through.
You are a fan of the long shot, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It draws me in. But old movies drive me nuts when they have when it's a close up of the face and someone's just going, they're sweaty and upset for a really long time. I don't know, that doesn't get me. Darn you.
My wife and I watched a movie last night with that's just really, really neat the way it was shot. It's got I'm just looking it up right now to see when it came out. It's got what's his name, Thor guy in it, Chris Hemsworth. It's called Extraction. Have you guys seen this? It was on,
my wife and I just saw that a couple weeks.
That was, it was just silly, but golly, it was really cool. Some of the scenes that were in this movie. While watching it, I was like, man, that'd be really cool to try to draw some of those scenes in the movie, how the camera just followed them. You were thinking how you were talking about the camera shots and stuff, and it's like that would be a neat movie to try to swipe some of the action. There was a scene where he was they fell off of a building and the camera followed him as he fell, and then the camera started running, and it's like, as he was rolling across the ground, and you're like, how did the camera guy do that where he fell off the building and then he went into a car and all that kind of stuff? It's like, was that a drone shot or that kind of thing? But those kind of movies really get me going when I'm trying to come up with scenes and stuff.
So Tommy, yeah, thank you for saying that, because from the artist side, and I say artist meaning the visual side, I don't know if any of the visual folks have more to chime in about what sort of style, framing, angles. The Batman movie, I don't know if the TV show did it, I probably did, but the Batman movie, the 1967 Adam West, whenever the villains were on screen, the camera angles are all crooked.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because they were all crooked.
One thing that always stayed with me was an Alfred Hitchcock movie called Rope.
Oh yes.
Where you kind of see that it's a swing door.
Yes.
You see, they're kind of hiding it from Jimmy Stewart, and he opens the door when the door swings one way and he swings the other way. You see him holding the rope, and he closes it. And I love the pacing of this shot. For some reason, it affected me so much that to this day I can see it very vividly. And that kind of helps. I kind of look at panels that way.
Yeah.
How would I want to try to approach that type of feel in a kind of a static medium, as it were. not really moving, but probably thinking like 3 panels back to back, something like
Yes.
that. That's constantly is always there.
Excellent reference. That is one of my favorite movies too. And again, with the long shot of it, have you seen Rope? Not if you've seen it, because that's such a great movie, and it's filmed in just a couple camera angles through the whole thing. It's Jimmy Stewart and these students have committed a murder, and the body is in a trunk in the foreground of the movie the whole time, almost the whole time. And so there's a shot that Sue Michael was saying, the camera sees into the kitchen before all the guests arrive for this dinner party, where he dropped the rope in. But then there's another scene where they've stacked up. They put all the food and the plates and stuff on that trunk, and 2 people are talking, and they're just kind of chatting, and the camera is set. You see the trunk, and you see their maid taking the plates off and into the kitchen, and the door's going, swinging back and forth. And she's bringing books that are supposed to go into the trunk, and she's just plunking them down next to the trunk, and she goes back and plunks them down next to the trunk. And it just builds and builds and builds and builds, because you're thinking she's about to open that trunk. And that's something that you visually is
just a seamless way.
What's that?
How he connected the scenes. There's just a seamless way how he connected the scenes, because it kind of pans to one item and you follow that item, and it opens up into a totally different scene by just kind of following that item. It was very play-like.
Yes.
But the way he captured it was so well. It was just it's astounding, really. I can't really say anything else about it.
That's one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. One of my favorite movies, and it's not a Hitchcock movie that comes up a lot. I mean, people talk about Rear Window and North by Northwest, and Psycho, of course. But Rope or Rear Window. Did I say Rear Window? Yeah, Rear Window is a great one too. But Rope, when I talk to cinephiles about movies, few people have seen Rope, so I recommend that one as a style-wise too, and pacing. It's so good. It's just it's so simple. It's one set. It's not a Hitchcock movie, but 12 Angry Men. That's another old, where it's just 12 guys in a jury deliberation room, and again the camera it's on each individual person, and it's such great acting and so much tension in that one scene. It's really astounding. I love it.
Something we were talking about the visual as an artist or compared to a writer. Something I'm always, whenever I'm watching any movies, just the way they or a TV show, the way they move the camera and the cinematography or whatnot. Like in the reason I do like the Mission Impossible movies, just because not only is the story and the plot, I think it's the best in the series so far, but also the shots they chose, like when they're building a tension where he's on the motorcycle and they're racing through the city, and he's going through all these columns, and you can just hear the wind whistling as he's passing each column, and you're just getting tighter and tighter down this, you don't know what's going to happen, and there's just all these different types of shots as the camera's following them and trying to play one way and kind of trick you out. But also another, like a TV show that I recently just remembered liking a lot of shots they shows was Better Call Saul. Just a lot of the character kind of moments whenever they're revealing something or just following character, I found to really like the shots they would choose, like in between columns of like the opening, the buildings and whatnot.
So for the visual, for the visual artists, do you borrow that? Do you take from that and use it and adapt it?
Sure. I don't know if I do it like directly. It might just be subconsciously, but it's just something I notice a lot whenever I'm watching a movie, or even just reading a comic. Like, I like how they made that shot work, or it's trying to think of his name, but like Alex Toth, he would use a lot of foreground elements to kind of use a panel, like build a panel, and the negative space would be the part that's important. So maybe that's where I see a lot of that from.
I did a book called Zomboy. It's one of my kid hero cartoony books, and now this was early. This was in the '90s when I wrote it. But I completely, you're talking about stealing scenes or whatever. I stole a scene completely. Of course, I cartooned it and made it more kid friendly and stuff. But in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Eraser, I think it was, there was a scene where they were in a some sort of an aquarium place that had some sharks and stuff. So I basically took that whole scene and made it penguins instead of sharks, and they shot the windows out, and I took the same, I froze it on the TV and sketched the same scene as the sharks were falling out of the glass, but I made penguins falling out, and I completely just swiped that whole sequence of the stuff. So and it was fun. Some people, when they read it, they go, "Oh, that's from from that book. That was pretty." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I was trying. That was kind of fun." So so you can, I changed it all up, but I drew it enough where they knew where it came from. I think I may have used some of the same dialogue just to make it silly, but it's fun to do that kind of stuff.
People like that. It's like the inside jokes, like Scott and I were talking about on like Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now and then there's something that's really, really deep, and it's like you really appreciate when you're like one of the few people that get that joke that they made. So it's like, I think when you're reading a book where somebody has put an Easter egg into it and you get it, it's you appreciate it that much more.
Yeah, I think I did like 2 or 3. I think it was 2 or 3 pages worth of it. It went on for a little bit to try to get the whole sequence in, but it was fun. It was fun to do.
It was a Picasso that said artists steal. So I guess you kind of take it to heart. But, you see something and it becomes part of you one way or another, whether you do it consciously or subconsciously. So, I mean, taking an angle or even a shot like the foreground or whatever, I really don't see any problem with it as long as it gets the story done. I mean, I guess people, there's always a complaint that, you're not coming at it off the top of your head, but no artist creates in a vacuum. Everything comes from somewhere. So,
well, I mean, you got your guys throwing punches and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna, how many punches can you throw that you go, I think I've seen, that's a new way to throw a punch. I don't think I've seen that before. or I jumped from the top of a building to the ground or whatever. I don't think that's a new way to do that. I don't think you rolled that. Yeah, it's
it's like Schwarzenegger stole that from Stallone. I've seen it before.
Yeah, I've seen that before. You stole that. Just like,
is that why Star Trek came up with the two-handed punch?
That's right. So you can get something different.
No one punches like this in the 23rd century.
No, that was brand new. You came up with that punch. Or the pose. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody where they're just standing there like this? Right? Yeah. It's like we all draw that.
So I'm doing my questions out of order, guys. Forgive me. Don't.
Oh no.
I don't want to mutiny. But I think this segues goodly into what elements of movies don't transfer into comic books, into that style of storytelling. Are there things that movies are limited and comics are limited? So what doesn't transfer over?
You're meaning like we're saying, like the adventure-y kind of action stuff is good, but so what stuff is?
No, I mean like dialogue, like explosions, or
one thing that definitely can't translate, I think, is like a voice. Like a lot of times I'll watch a cartoon or like I'm watching the Venture Brothers, like half of what's funny about something is the way a character talks. And there's no way to convey that in a comic book, to convey like a funny voice or a weird voice or anything like that.
Or this voice is supposed to be stuttery, kind of like this. Like, how do you write?
Like some of those things are just so hard to get across in the comics. So I think that's one place where a comic is inferior to a film or any sort of visual medium. That's like motion.
Yeah,
That has panels.
the closest you can come to that is kind of trying to emulate enunciation. You get
Using
so-
a different font, maybe.
you get
just
some
to make
gam-
it
you
look
get-
wavy font.
you get
kind of
some
stuff.
like X-Men or Gambit runs where you have like the apostrophes in the right place, and other times you have no idea what he's saying.
That's true. That's accents are hard. I mean, you can get them across, but Chris Claremont did it all the time in like New Mutants or Claire, like just trying to like get someone's accent across, and written dialogue is kind of hard sometimes too. But I think you said previous ones you've talked about the thought balloon, and I think that's a place where comic books could be superior to films, in that you can have an internal dialogue and not have it come off. For me, it never came off hokey. I always loved it because I have a running dialogue in my head all the time when I'm not talking, or even when I am talking to people. There's always like thoughts going on in my head, and I think it's in a comic how you can get inside someone's head like that. It's kind of unique to comics, and that's one way I think that they differ and it can be superior too.
And that's why I also like that the new Spider-Verse movie that came out, the animated ones, because they actually implemented that in there, and it just worked so well in the movie.
That was a phenomenal movie visually, and everything about it was so good.
That's on my list.
Incorporated the art.
I'm changing that. Star Wars is out now. The Spider-Man movie. I've changed it now.
As your new favorite?
Yeah, it's my new favorite. Spider-Verse. That was really good.
Yeah, we've watched
Spider-Man. Peter Parker. Actually, I mean, I know it wasn't about
that.
Yeah, it wasn't so much about Peter Parker, it was the other guy, but Peter Parker was great in that. That was actually Spider-Man. That was really, really good.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later, about what movies have translated or have been made into comics well and poorly. So we can yak about that later. Is there any other elements that Dan mentioned, that pacing, that having a voice that's either silly or ominous, other than like making them the fonts squiggly,
the fonts, different fonts, wiggly, special effects and stuff. It sometimes it comes off. Yeah, it doesn't come across sometimes.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like, especially if that's like the main trait, or not even a main trait, but just like something that's humorous. So that, like, I don't know if you guys watch the Venture Brothers, but just the way the Monarch talks makes me laugh. Just his voice, the way it sounds, makes me laugh. And it's just, or even Brock Sampson's voice, the way it's just, the voices are great in that show. And it's just, there's nothing you can do to get that across in a comic. All the voice actors are just awesome.
Yeah. I think the only thing would be trying to do some of those Scott's favorite lawn shots. If there's any sort of lawn drawn motion that that's what I would translate. You can't do the running scene from the trailer of 1917 because you'd have to show an entire panel like, okay, he's here now. He's here now. He's here now. He's here now.
This tree has moved from here to here to here.
Yeah.
You could do it. It would just take a whole issue.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one time where Matt Wagner in Batman versus Grendel, I don't know if you guys have read that, there was like a sequence where he laid out a page where Batman and Grendel are fighting, and he did like a 20-panel page of their fight. And they were all really small figures, and they were almost like silhouettes, but it was just awesome because you saw like each blow in that fight. You saw when Batman broke his arm, and it was so great.
Yeah.
It was just really,
It's
like the one instance where I could see that translating from a movie into a comic.
It's like kind of dovetailing off of what Dan said, and then also what Alex said about the newest Mission Possible, that bathroom scene, like what I was saying earlier about like translating kinetic energy into a story. That fight scene, I think, did a really good job of just showing, like, okay, especially Henry Cavill's fight style, because he's such a big dude, so they did a lot of capturing, like, here's this blow, and then just the hard grab and smashing someone. So you can do that in a comic, just translating each blow into a panel and making it feel very kinetic.
It's hard to do, but when they do it good, it some of those artists, not me, but some of the guys, when they can actually draw it really well, like the simple motion of like flipping a coin in your hands, I've got a Mitch Bird did a comic. I can't remember what it was that he showed a guy that for I don't remember why, but it was he had just a coin, and it was a double page spread where it went across, and he showed each as he flipped it
Wow.
through it, and you're like you felt that he flipped that coin in his hand, and it worked. But then if I would have drawn it, it'd look like crap. But if you can do it, then bless you.
We're gonna have to do a whole one of these issues on imposter syndrome and let Tommy take over.
Actually, though, it makes me wonder something. As I've been thinking through your question, Scott, one thing that's striking me is it's hard for me to compare movies in particular to comics, because action usually end with a really big kinetic final conflict of some kind, but you already know what's going to happen. And in comics, I feel like that doesn't translate as well, because you're looking at static pictures, and frankly, it's just fun. You know what I mean? Like if we had seen the comic book version of Avengers Endgame, I mean, they would have made an extra size issue just to detail, the whole thing of them trying to get the gauntlet away from Thanos at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have taken
forever.
It would have taken forever.
Yeah.
And just the very visceral feel and the sound and the music all playing together. You don't really.
There you go, music.
There you go, yeah.
Those the sound.
Totally there.
I mean,
So
sound effects are different than music. Sound effects are the punching noises and the door slamming, but then the theme of the songs that are playing in the background. What do? You do a little caption at the top that says,
well, please play this
"Soft sound
song,
here."
cut to this sound.
That's right. Raindrops in the background with smooth violin playing.
I think one of the big ones they always talk about is Jaws. Like they show Jaws without any music, and then they show it with the music, and just like how much tension.
Yeah, how silly it would be without the music, right?
Yeah, I forget what I was watching, some documentary about it or something, and they just show the fin in the water going like this, and it's like nothing without that music.
You go, this sucks. What is this stupid fish swimming around?
I mean, if you think about it, would you even be interested in reading a comic book adaptation of Jaws? I mean, it would be boring.
Yeah.
Not because you've seen it so much, but because all of every well, not taste, but almost all your other senses are engaged in what you're seeing, and it's really the best are able to channel all those into a particularly emotional gut punch that really sticks with you. But the thing is, comics can do it too, but they can't rely on just the kinetic energy final battle because they're limited. So they have to do something else. And I've been trying to think through.
Or jump scares too, like what you're saying. Those kind of scenes that.
Right. So the best, for me, the most memorable endings to comics are usually something that involves a huge change that I didn't see coming. Like if you think about every action movie, you can put money on how it's going to end.
Right.
I mean, the fun part is seeing how they get there, but you know where they're going.
Yeah.
So if a comic is really firing on all cylinders for me, it's when it takes you somewhere, even in a way that's not like huge and life shattering, but you're like, oh wow, that's really powerful. Watchmen did it for me. That's probably my gold standard. Like the final issue of Saga that just came out. I know the series isn't done, but I can still remember vividly my reaction when I saw that final panel. I was like, and I don't do that for most movies, which are much more expensive to produce. So kudos to those guys.
And that was the other side of the question I was going to talk about. What do comics have visually that movies don't? And the written word, even if it's just a book with no images, but comics especially, we can linger on that page. And we can, with a movie, if we're in the theater, we got no option. Can't go back. And even when you're sitting at home, how often do you pause, go back and watch that scene again? Every once in a while, there's an amazing scene at home. But in the written, the paper or the digital image, that we can linger on those words or those panels, that's unique to this to the comic medium. And if anybody else has anything to say, go ahead.
No, just you can like, especially like an artist that's a very detailed artist, so you can like look into the backgrounds and like, you know, really just pour into what they created. And yeah, you're right. You can't, if it's just a pan shot in a movie, there's a lot you can lose in that. But in a comic, you can, you pace how quickly you go through a scene.
All right. I believe we also have a review to get to at some point. Yeah.
Is this a good time, everybody? Did anybody else have something to throw in? We can chat about this on the other side of Wayne Hall's review. Does that sound good?
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're going to switch to the review.
Hello, Wayne Hall back again, talking about indie comics you can order through your local store. And I realized that I haven't been talking much about fun books. Every time I do a fun factor, it's low. So I thought this time I would balance that out by talking about a fun book or a fun series of books. That book is called Hilo. Hilo, the Boy Who Crashed to Earth, is the first in a series of 6 books from Judd Winnick. It's a series of actually quite fun books, aimed largely at younger kids, I think. But, you know, as an adult and a comic reader, I really enjoy it. As you can tell in here, there's a lot of comic art and things like that going on. And the story is about what appears to be a young boy. And I'll read the back real quick to you. Hilo doesn't know where he came from or what he's doing on Earth, or why he's going to school in only your underwear is a bad idea. But what if Hilo wasn't the only thing that fell to the planet? Can Hilo, DJ, and Gina unlock the secrets of his past? Can Hilo survive a day at school? Find out in Hilo, a laugh-out-loud epic story of friendship, adventure, and the occasional mutant robot ant. And one of the gags they do on here, if you see on there, they're yelling, "Ah!" Whenever they greet each other. That's a greeting that Hilo, when he runs into DJ, that's his reaction. "Ah!" And so from then on, whenever he's greeting people, he's "ah." There are a lot of the usual kid-type jokes. There's some fart stuff. There's some other stuff going on that, if you know kids, it's pretty normal. And it turns out, and of course I don't want to spoil stuff, but there are 6 volumes, and we find out pretty quickly Hilo is not a boy. He is a robot. And the nice thing about this book is that it is rather comical. There's a lot of interesting stories going on about the various people that Hilo runs into, including DJ, who is a friend, and Gina, a girl that they know. And there's a lot of diversity going on in this book, I have to say. There's Hilo when he realizes, I think, that he's a robot, and he's got all kinds of wonderful powers and things like that. And he says, there he's saying, "It seems I can fly." And there's a lot of that kind of humor, which is a grade of things going on. Lots and lots and lots of superpowers. We find out where he's from over time. We also get to discover the wonderful things about the artwork. Judd Winnick, being a writer and artist, he often does things on Facebook. He puts little bits out. The art is actually quite good. I actually like this. It has a fun feel to it, which are good. And the 6th one is out. I've read all 6, and I enjoy them all. And it's a great bunch of characters. Hilo, of course, DJ, Gina. And they as they start along, we get to know their families. We get to find out who is what. We find out about Hilo's past. And there are a lot of fun things. This is where they're meeting like the family and stuff like that. So there's lots and lots of family stuff going on. And also in school, they have some fun things about school. And, you know, being the outsider that Hilo is, just like in Star Trek, you always got to have an outsider who looks at society and notices the strangeness of what life is like for the rest of us. And he has that perspective that makes it kind of comical. He gets a lot of fun out of all these things. The first book, of course, we discover a lot about him. This is when he crash lands. He's got underwear on, thankfully, and they get to go. He speaks and stuff, and this is where he meets, and this is where the comes. He says, "Hey," and and from then on he goes back, because that's what the guy does when he meets him. And there are all kinds of fun things. Another word he likes is outstanding. When he comes to stuff and something's great, he goes outstanding. And of course, there's burp jokes going on and all those kinds of wonderful things. He discovers the human condition, which is not not always the most acceptable of things. And we get to see a lot of what's going on. He brings a raccoon to school, which of course doesn't go over very well, and things like this. This is all in the first book. There are several chapters going on. And, he gets to stand up and try to do a performance and stuff like that at the talent show kind of stuff. And there's all kinds of interesting things going on. The thing that's funny about it is, and I don't want to spoil the humor, of course, there he is burping again. There are a lot of running gags in this book, lots and lots of good things. So it's fun to see. Like I said, the diversity factor is high. It's really good. Knowing that he's not a real boy, it's typical Disney stuff, is that his goal in life is likely to become a real boy. And, that makes sense. Of course, if you're a robot and you're around humans, you want to be like them. So what's happening is that in the 6th issue, a lot of this resolves, 6th book. They're hardcover. They come out in paperback, too. I happen to have the hardcovers because I like Judd Winnick's stuff, and so I started out buying it when I noticed. I should mention, too, there's something really interesting going on, a phenomenon going on about young adult and young, children's books. There's like a Dog Boy book that's going over huge. I mean, it just sells like crazy. So this is big on the fun factor. If you have a younger reader, or heck, even like me, I'm an older reader, and I enjoyed it. So let's get to the gradings. The writing is great fun. I would give it a B+. Lots of fun. Lots of things in jokes that kids would get. Then the art is good. I give that a B+ too. I think that he does do a lot of, the surprised expression is one he uses a lot in there. So I like that. Lettering's good. I think it's pretty well done. I think I'd give it a B. I'm always thinking there's some way, but that it could be a little better. Here's where we discover he's a robot right there. That's in the first series. And so there's all kinds of things going on. The literary merit, that actually may be a little low on this one. I would probably give it a B. It could be B-. I'm not convinced. A lot of the jokes are going to be time sensitive, seems to me. And so I think over time, it may be less enjoyable than it is right now. So I'll give it a C+ for that. The fun factor. This is the reason why I'm talking about this book. I got to give this an A. It's lots and lots of fun, and I haven't intentionally have not talked about a lot of the jokes. And outstanding. There's where he says outstanding. That's one of the things he does all the time. So there's all kinds of great fun things. I think Judd Winnick has really captured the ability to tell funny stories. So the fun factor, unlike my other books, this is an A. This is a very fun book. I think this could be a way to get kids to read more comics. I really, really have to give this a good grade. Overall grade. The overall grade on this one, I think, would be a B+. Now, the thing is as an adult looking back at this, I may be a little more critical of it than, say, a younger reader would be. They might look at this and think this is worth a lot more. But I would give it at least a B+. And that's from a guy who's been reading comics as long as I have. It's entertained me. It was gripping. The stories that's going on, the stuff that they say to each other is great fun. Artwork, this is the inner side, which I kind of enjoy. That's the 3 of them. And there are 6 volumes, though. To get the whole story, though, you get all 6 volumes. You can buy them through local shops. It's available on Amazon if you can't get your local store to order it. I've bought these through a local store. It's printed. Let's see. Let me get who the printer is real quick. Dun, 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 dun. It is Random House. So, yeah, usually any old bookstore can get them. Like I said, I have gotten them through my local shop. So if you're interested in this book, if you have like younger readers or you just enjoy kind of fun storytelling, I highly recommend Hilo. You are going to get to read all 6 at once, and like me, I had to wait months for the next chapter to come out. All 6 are out. You can get them. I don't know if they've put it in one big collected volume yet. I haven't seen that happen yet. But Hilo is a great adventure book. I would give it a B+, possibly A- if you're younger than I am. So it's a great book, and I think you will like it as if you're an adult reading it, and if you're young kids who enjoy these kinds of things, I think you'll have a lot of fun to it. It's in the Dog Boy range, which is super popular right now. I'm always amazed at. But Hilo is a great book. I would recommend it. Have lots of fun with it. And until next time, keep reading your comics.
And we're back with Silverline Wednesday Night Wham! With your host, Scott Wakefield.
Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday Night Wham! I'm your host, Scott Wakefield. For a little while from a remote location in the hills of West Virginia, we've got our team of artists here lined up to discuss how movies influence our craft, the creation of comic books, how things overlap, how we can borrow from each other, and how each can be better working together. And we've got artists here. Before I forget, I want to have our artists here tell us what they are working on. We've got Alex, if you don't mind. Are you able to talk?
Yes, I'm still working on Cat and Mouse. This is just a page 18. So third or fourth last page. So we're nearing the end of issue 3.
Right. And Mr. C. Michael Lanning.
Currently, I'm just doing some character designs for a future miniseries for Silverline.
Okay. And what are we seeing on the big screen?
We're seeing Tommy.
This is from the Trump's book. I'm not sure what the character is name, but you can see they got the card emblems on them. So each of the different Warren groups. Is it?
Right. It means the Jester, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the club's characters, but this is page 11 from the second half of the first book. The first book's going to be like 50 pages or so, 48 pages, I think. And
so that's really like page 33.
Yeah. So the books, I've already 24 is the first part, and then another 7 or 8 of the second part, and so hopefully we're gonna, if I remember what Roland said, we're gonna have it out by September, I believe. Yep. So it's finishing up the first book, and we're getting it colored right now. The colors are looking really good, and as you can see, the pencils look great. And of course, things are looking pretty spiffy. And so if Roland is writing it, so who knows what the people are going to say? We'll have to ask Roland. And because I didn't see the script, and so I don't know what they're talking about. So this girl is saying, "Hey, I don't want to go," and he's like, "You've got to go," and she's like, "I don't want to go."
Get in the robot, Shinji.
Yeah, so I'm just making the
a bad lip reading version of the.
That's good.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. No, let's not go.
Maybe can I go to the bathroom first?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Before we go to battle, I have to go to the bathroom. No, but I really gotta go. I've gotta go. But anyway, that's what I'm doing.
Perfect.
Thank you. We're all professionals here.
That's right.
Roland listening in is going back and changing the
I
script.
know. Roland is probably like, I'm firing Thomas after this is over with.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah, or he's taking it. He's like, dang, I didn't think about that. I didn't know what to write on that page. I'm going to write that.
Everyone has to go to the bathroom.
That's right.
It's never dealt with enough in comic books.
No, I mean they got in there in those suits. How do they get out of the suits? Then you can have 4 or 5 pages. We're talking about how long it takes to draw a fight scene. Just think if you had to use the bathroom, how long that would take. That would just be forever to draw that kind of stuff. That's why we don't draw it.
Stuff we don't talk about.
That's right.
Very important. Well, that translates perfectly. That goes right into what we were talking about before the break. Is what comic books can do that movies can't. We could spend panel after panel on how superheroes go to the bathroom, or if somebody else has other thoughts. We were talking about how we can linger on an image or a scene, and we can literally draw and then figuratively draw out that scene, or truncate it with short choppy bits. We can go from punch to punch, or we can go from everybody's facial reactions or anything like that. And that's the beauty of the comic.
And I feel like really the thing that is super different between movies and comics is comics. As long as you're from panel to panel, you're at least keeping it consistent with the story. You have these gutters that there's movements that are happening in between these spaces. Whereas in a movie, you have to show, for the most part, what's happening, because then it might get lost about what's happening and all the details. But with a comic, it can be, like you're saying, choppy, and it can, from one panel to the next, there could be, something happening, but it's not important enough, or the reader has to see it. So it's quicker. And, you might read a comic in 15 minutes, but that scene in a movie might take, it could take an hour depending on the comic. So I'd say that's the big difference between comics and movies.
The room with which you can pace something is much more you're much more flexible with the comic.
Yeah, this is an issue that's kind of specific to being a theater kid, but it also works in movies. But the trouble of blocking out a monologue, there's nothing worse than having some person standing still and delivering the equivalent of 3 bubbles of text, but as a monologue, just standing there doing nothing. So in theater and movies, they always have to block out some sort of movement. Comics, it's almost a trope, I feel like, at this point. Like, wide panel, hard zoom on the face, 3 bubbles, and then cut to the rest of the story there underneath. Yeah.
It's done. Yeah.
Just get it out. Just get it done. Moving on.
It's always the tough part in comics, right? With the dialogue, it's just because you don't want a page, you're just talking heads sometimes. If that's what sometimes you got to do it, right? There's no other way around.
Yeah.
You can make the expressions as interesting as possible, but it's yeah.
But you can also do the caption with
caption,
movement. You've got movement, and you can be telling. It's not necessarily exactly what's happening, but you can be telling what's coming up or what's happened while we're seeing action.
Yeah, you could deliver the first person caption while the action is happening or while something else is happening.
Right.
Yeah. It also, depending on the story you're doing, they can also give you a really cool kind of, if you're writing something that you're drawing movement and inspiration from a noir movie, that can also give you that same sort of feel where you have the narration over the scene unfolding.
Yep. Any other thoughts on how the comic book is superior in all forms and manners to the motion picture?
It's cheaper.
Unlimited special effects.
Yeah, just think the budget, I mean, besides you just paying the person to draw the page.
Yeah.
And
just picture Star Trek,
Yeah.
You got the guys in the, basically it's just people wearing prosthetic, helmet. But, in the comic, you can just draw whatever you want.
Yeah.
So not everybody has to be a humanoid shaped person with a plastic Halloween mask on.
Yeah.
So,
your special effects budget is directly proportional to your artist carpal tunnel.
Yeah. Exactly.
For the longest time, I mean, they couldn't make good superhero movies. Like you had Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, and it just never translated. But now that you have the technology to create, you can actually recreate what was done in comics for 50 years before the technology could catch up where you could translate these epic, ridiculous characters to the screen.
And don't you, when you see a comic, unless it's supposed to be kind of like a cheesy Star Trek, monster, alien or whatever, but when you see an alien in a comic and you go, that's just some dude in a mask, don't you go, they just kind of didn't think very much in the creativity in there. So, you kind of like, oh, you could have come up with something a little crazier than the guy standing there with the 2 arms and 2 legs and a bone on his face, like in Star Trek.
No. We got a question on the Facebook. Christina Lynn asks, what do you guys think about writing flashbacks? And I can talk about this kind of from an editor's perspective who just recently dealt with a book where one of my notes was limit the flashbacks. And I'd say limit them if you need to include them. There's sometimes where a story will call for it or will make for more engaging storytelling to save some exposition for a flashback later on or whatever. So limit it to only when it's really needed and not a whole lot then. But I'd say that's an advantage comic has over traditional prose is we can do a visual way of indicating the flashback like a movie can, whereas prose cannot. So if we're doing a flashback and I'm working with Alex might feel like, okay, I'm going to do these 3 panels or whatever kind of shaky lines because it's a shaky memory, or the colorist might throw them in sepia or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing you can do with comic is you can have 2 different scenes running at the same time. In a movie, you'd have to literally have 2 screens going at the same time. In a comic, you could just, this panel, is a different scene, and boom, that's a whole, like, the colors, the way, the ink, it could be more of like a painting or like an ink wash, whereas the main part is, like a comic. It's all about the way you storytell and how it makes it different.
In the first issue of the comic I self-published was told very non-linearly, and I think if I could go back and do it again, I think I would just tell it linearly, because I think, to me, I knew the story really, really well, and the person I was writing with knew the story really well, but I think to someone coming in from the outside, if you're just cutting back and forth a lot, I think it can be jarring and confusing. I think there's definitely ways to do it and really do it well. I don't think I particularly did it really well in that first issue, and that's why I think I would prefer to go back and kind of re-block it out in a linear sequence, because I think it's easier to a reader. I think it's easier, especially in a first issue, to just let someone enter the universe and just be part of it and not kind of confused. But I had other people read it and they said they like to read it and then go back and try and figure out everything that was going on. So I don't know, but I think if I could do it over again, I would probably just do it linearly.
Well, and just think of the cost. If you were making a movie and you decided, like you're saying, oh, that whole scene, you're done filming with all the principal photography and everything, and you got to redo a scene. How much that would cost. With a comic, you just redraw it. You just show that.
I was even thinking about redoing the comic, and it's just a matter of pulling out the pages, reordering them, and then probably doing a couple sequences to tie it all and make it all make sense linearly.
I mean, I don't know how many times that after working on a book that I'd been done on for a month or so, there's some of the Spider-Man stuff that they wanted to change something, and they just sent me a panel, and they said, here, can you just ink this real quick, and we're going to throw it, and we're just sticking on top of the other panel, and then boom, and then it's just a new sequence and all that kind of stuff. Just easy to do.
Dan, your comment about it being the flashback in the first issue, TV shows, like in season 2 or 3, where they'll start with they're tied to the railroad tracks, or the bomb's about to go off, and then it goes back 24 hours earlier, and that works because it's a little easier, I think, because you've got the characters established, you've got your story. There's not so much to introduce, but I think all of us are saying it's a perfectly good method when done correctly.
When done well, And I feel like also with any sort of creative, like you have your rules, which is don't draw so far out the panel if you're writing to use grammar rules, but most art is subjective, and any sort of advice isn't prescriptive to everything and everyone.
Right. Yep. We answered that question.
Hopefully.
All right. So another question I had here. Is it good to blur the lines between movies and comic books, to borrow from each other? Or are we not, when we do that, are we not allowing comic books to be comic books and movies to be movies? Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean by borrow from one?
So when we write a comic book, do we have cinematography in mind? Is that a good thing to use the screenplay, the visuals of a movie in a comic book, or is it just a natural thing that they fit so well together?
Yeah, I think since they're both visual mediums, I think it just tends to one tends to lead to the other. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. I think it's like the scene from, I think it was Batman Year One with the pearl necklace being pulled off of Martha Wayne, and that's been done like I think 18 times now in the movies. But the first time it was done, it was really cool visually, because as soon as I saw it visually in the movie, I thought of the comic, and I think there can be crossover, and there can be a lot of when they're making movies, they can just use the comics for storyboards a lot of the times when they're done really well. And I don't think it's bad for either one. Personally, I think they can easily both borrow from each other and still be what they are.
When you boil it down, it's a necessity to I guess be to be able to storytell or choose different angles, because if you didn't, then a comic would probably just be the same angle the whole way through, and comics probably wouldn't have still been around. So for us to look at movies since they came before, and we see, in just everyday life, you see different angles and different things. So it really depends on the way the script's written. So, and that's something you figure out in the thumbnails, is how everything kind of works together. And in a movie, it's a necessity to change the angle and change the scene to build tension or to relieve tension and follow the audience through the movie. You really couldn't have a movie or a comic just with the same panel over and over and over. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't serve much purpose.
Yep. And was it John Gardner said there are only two kinds of stories, and everything else is an iteration of that. And I think for any art, really, everything you're going to do is pastiche of everything you've encountered beforehand. So you can't really help but regurgitate what you experienced before and then put that through your own filters. So even if you're kind of thinking in terms of the movies you've seen before, it's still coming out in your own voice as a writer and description, and then through the artist's own interpretation of that. So no matter what, you're going to be informed by your experience, and then no matter what, it's going to be more defined by the hands creating it. That's what I got.
Dan, you made a good comment about comic books being storyboards for movies, and that I did a quick search on and got a Wikipedia result of comic books turned into films, and it is an exhaustive list, even just the English language movies, and I think it's pretty incredible, and it speaks to comics as such a great way to tell a story that you just can't help but turn it into a movie, because the visuals are all there, and then you want the filmmakers want to add those elements, the sound, the soundtrack, and fill in the spaces between the panels that the comic books don't have. I think it's just they fit so well together. No thoughts on that? You don't have good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
All right. So we are getting toward the end, and I think we can kind of have a little fun with this. And what movies have been, or what comic books have been turned into good movies, and what comic books have been turned into bad movies, or vice versa. And when I say movies turned into comic books, my initial thought is that it's really just taking the movie and putting it in another medium. But that's not necessarily true, because the comic books have taken the story world, even just like Star Trek and Star Wars novels or comic books, they've taken the story world and they've then expanded to their own stories. So what has been done well, or what has been done poorly?
Well, a lot of bad comic books turn into movies. It's more of that than the other. I would say.
DC.
Who mentioned Justice League?
That was me. Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe does it great. I mean, I know it's not based exactly of translate, like Road to Perdition takes a comic and directly translates it into a movie. And I think it does a great job of it. That's one I think is awesome. But as far as just like taking the core ideas and like translating it into movies, I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done just about as good a job, I think, as you can do, creating like the feel of what I loved about comics in the 80s, the shared universe, that everything's happening in the same place. And even though like one movie doesn't directly lead into another, at one point it did, you always felt like everything was happening in the same space. And I think they did a great job with that over, 10 years, 11 years, whatever it's been at now, I think. It's
even through the different the studios, they're not every studio is not making all the Marvel movies, but they still all kind of feel like they're together, though, don't they?
Yeah. And I mean, you can look, and then you go and look at the DC stuff, which I haven't seen all of it, but I'm not that interested in seeing all of it. I saw the Shazam movie. I liked that. That was awesome. Wonder Woman was good. I don't think it was as remarkable as it was touted to be. I liked it a lot, but I didn't think it was like the greatest superhero movie I'd ever seen, like people were saying about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, besides that, I saw Superman versus Batman. I didn't like it. It just feels like they were like, they saw what Marvel was doing and they just like rushed to like try and catch up to like where they were, instead of just like kind of pacing themselves and gradually getting to like just following the same formula they did, where Marvel spent 4 or 5 years getting to that first Avengers movie, and then another 5 years to fighting Thanos after that. It was well paced out, and just really there was a map, and it was Kevin Feige. He had a plan, and it was a pretty good plan.
I don't think I've ever been as excited for something in my adult life as I was for Endgame because of the build-up.
Yeah,
But we actually.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say we have a thing in the chat, so I'll let you say your point if you have one, and then we'll pop over to that.
No, it was just basically like Star Wars was my thing growing up, and then I've just been so disappointed by it that the Marvel Universe kind of filled that vacuum for me.
Yes.
When I came along, yeah.
But Christina says, I think TV shows based on comics are better than movies, partly because they're usually animated. And I will say that DC's animated content has been pretty spectacular, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's better than their live action stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of that, usually the animated is always going to be better because it's like the same thing with the budget. You have unlimited budget. You can do whatever you want. There's really nothing that says you can't do, beyond just like the rating of the movie. If you want to be PG-13 or whatnot, you have unlimited, untapped potential.
There's no way they could do Ninja Batman as a live action movie, but their animated department gave that to us.
Yeah. No, it's pretty good. DC's interesting because I think their TV shows probably across the board are generally much better than their movies are.
Yeah.
And Marvel, I think it's the other way around, like except for like the Netflix stuff. But like when they were doing like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, that was like really hit and miss, and not that good compared to like what they were doing with the movie. So it's weird that they kind of have different strengths in what like they can produce on screen.
I agree.
And did we say this? Into the Spider-Verse is fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic adaptation. It's animated. It's a comic book movie. It's got the sound effects. It's got the even the artistic style of the art is amazing. I've watched that half a dozen times with my kids and just absolutely love that movie because it's a comic book, you know.
And that's the thing. I think that's out of all the different Spider-Man movies, I think that's my favorite, just because they did everything that they could to do it. There's not really like a thing where that it wasn't Spider-Man at all. It was everything was to a T.
Well, that's what I loved about Ant-Man as well. Is it was a very comic booky movie.
Yeah.
It was a little cheesy.
I think that's probably what made it good, is because it was kind of cheesy. Yeah.
He gets hit by a toy train, and it's fighting in a briefcase, and the cell phones playing the music, and I loved it. I loved Ant-Man to speak to Marvel movies versus DC movies, they've been a very comic booky, without being too hokey, but they've been a comic booky feeling.
They do a great job with like the comedic dialogue, like with just lightening the mood. It's certain. Sometimes you do it too much, and it's like, I thought, like in Thor Ragnarok, there was like jarring, going from like Hela on Asgard, and then like the buddy movie Thor Hulk stuff going on Sakaar. I love the movie, but I thought like the differences in tone between those two things going on simultaneously was sometimes jarring. But they definitely do that whole, the comedic banter is great in those movies.
That's I liked going back to Ant-Man. Lewis, the character, to come out and just explain the last 5 minutes too. Whereas they established that this is the funny character, so there's not really any jarring with it, and then he comes on like, here is just sheer hilarity, and then we cut back to what you're expecting to be more of the heist movie.
Yeah.
It looks like Tommy's screen might have died.
Even with back to the Spider-Verse stuff, I loved all the visual nods to the artists that like the Kingpin was a Sienkiewicz Kingpin. It was awesome to see that. Like just like all those little nods and like homages to those people were great. Yeah, it was pretty perfect. It was pretty remarkable.
The other movie I had on my list was Scott Pilgrim. And I honestly never read the comic book, but I want to. But the movie is another comic book movie with explosions and the sound effects and the freeze frames. I thought they did that very well.
I also enjoyed it as a bassist. I thought,
great soundtrack. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It's interesting. It's just I like when they make the comic book movie try to, even like the first Ang Lee Hulk movie kind of did that, where they had like multiple panels going on screen, where they kind of try to make it fit. It's like that had cool, I think, some cool visual things going on in it, despite not being the best Hulk movie. But
I just think
I thought it was pretty cool.
I think it was interesting that they wanted to go that route. I think their execution was very poor on how it kind of just looked like a PowerPoint, presentation, the way everything was transitioning and everything. But it still got made.
Yeah.
So,
and it was enjoyed by its own group of people.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned the Crow movie. That was pretty good, except for the death. Skip that part. But that was a pretty good. For what I remember, it was. It looked good.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember loving it the first time I saw it, and just it being a pretty faithful adaptation, and just in tone and visually to
Yeah.
what the comics like. Yeah.
The remake is kind of in limbo hell right now for the movie. At least.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those ones that really doesn't need to be remade.
Right.
No, yeah.
And you can do a different Crow and still have a cool movie. They're trying to do Eric Draven again. I just don't think we need it. You know, it's kind of like with certain movies that you don't really remake,
Yeah.
like Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Or Green Lantern. We need a new Green Lantern. Don't we?
Yes. And we talked about it earlier, but on the subject of Green Lantern, Alex corrected me
And
earlier.
then there's movies that beg to be remade.
Yeah.
So,
The Crow's the first comic book movie, and then the first like cape or like Hispanic comic book movie was Shaq's Steel, and that that needs some redemption in my opinion.
still was before Blade.
Mm-hmm. By 1 year, yeah. It came out
What
1 year
about the
early.
first Spawn movie? I remember when Spawn came out, the original.
Oh god.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a really bad comic book movie.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not talking about that comic book. That's right. I'm sorry.
We're talking good and bad. Good and
Yeah.
bad.
Good and bad.
I just remember being so happy to see an Image comic book made into a movie. It was like, go see it. It's all right. Back when you're 16 or whatever, 18 or whatever.
I was 0 years old.
Oh, that's right. You're just a little baby.
The youngest pencilist in comics today.
That's right.
Is Thomas Hedgel.
That's true.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have thoughts on good movies that come from comics or bad movies before we wrap up?
I will say, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I think good movies turning into comics, kind of like how Dan and we're all saying is that what he thinks Marvel really did well is that they didn't straight up copy the comics into movies. They adapted it and expanded it, and I think that's what Star Wars did, and what gave Star Wars a lot of longevity was creating their expanded universe, and that's what I fell in love with after I watched the original trilogy. Was I watched the prequels and then forgot about them and ignored most of the new movies. But Star Wars for me now is the Legends books and the comics, and so much so that I got tattoos for them. But for me it was the Marvel did, and the Dark Horse took over the comics for a while, and those were I think some of the best Star Wars content that I've read.
You know, Jan Durisma, she did a bunch of Star Wars comics for Dark Horse. She was one of my teachers at the Keyword School.
That's
so
nuts.
she has a bunch of that stuff still, and she was very fond of having that ability to do that and create characters that actually ended up being in the movies. So
yeah,
I think she drew X-Men 2099 when I was an assistant editor at Marvel, I think.
Wow.
I'm thinking of the right 2099 book. Yeah, she was nice.
yeah, she is. She's great.
So we can all agree that we wouldn't have good movies without comic books,
right?
And comic books make good movies and their worlds even better. So comics are superior, and everything.
Well, it's so weird to think about. What would the last 10 years of pop culture look like without comics?
Yeah.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No Marvel versus DC. No.
What would all the kids buy
no
on Hot Topic?
Deadpool.
Yeah.
No Deadpool. No Harley Quinn.
Oh yeah, no underage Harley Quinns running around the the Comic Cons, not realizing that they're wearing outfits for that they shouldn't be because they don't even know what the character is. Yeah.
Yeah, no Jokers.
No dancing Deadpools. You know, at the shows. And
It would definitely be different.
It surprises me how much people misunderstand the relationship between Harley Quinn and Joker.
I know,
Oh, boy.
I know, and you see, and then you
Yeah.
see the little kids, the little tiny, I mean, like the 5-year-olds dressed up as Harley Quinn, and you like, Mom,
Yeah.
do you know what you just dressed your kid up as? Why
Yeah.
did you do that? Do you not?
Yeah.
Do you not even know? All right, cute.
That's what I did like about the new Birds of Prey movies, that they did not shy away from the fact that it was not like a good relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the constant review I hear back from is even if people had mixed feelings about it, they're like, but they made Harley Quinn
Her own person.
her own person, and kind of and redeem that sort of misconception about her.
Plus Suicide Squad, just
Oh boy,
that's another bad one.
What about Aquaman? What did y'all think about the Aquaman movie?
I'd say it's like 50.
It had its moments.
I enjoyed it.
I loved the underwater parts. I thought that was like, it kind of reminded me of the experience of watching Avatar for the first time in the theaters. Just, it was that level of, I think, like the world building and kind of the CGI they used to effect. I think like that's something really hard to pull off in comics because it would take
underwater. Yeah, because you just kind of float. Are you floating or are you underwater? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, not even that, but just Atlantis and like all the buildings and everything, and the ships they were using underwater. Like all that stuff takes forever to draw, but it only takes them to model it one time, and then they can duplicate them.
Well, what do you guys think? We want to wrap up. We want to end with our where do you find us on our socials and how do you support us?
I think
we all good?
I think it's a good time as either.
All right. I have had a great time with all of you. Thank you. And how about I go first so I'm not the last on the list?
Sure.
With my socials. I'm Scott Wakefield, and I'm creating Steam Patriots. It's just at on Facebook and Instagram. And would love if you liked and followed and commented on and shared and all. And how about Tim? You want to go next?
Sure. I am Tim TK. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Tim TK Writer. I'm on Liker at Tim TK. I'm kind of falling off Facebook a little bit because the no one's on it as much. I'm on TikTok at Tim Doesn't TikTok, and I'm here on Twitch. Agro Bacon is the username. I'll be live tonight with either Inquisitor Martyr or Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Tommy?
Thomas Florimonte, Florimonte. I'm just look for Florimonte, and you'll be able to find me pretty much anywhere. My personal website is Inferno Studios, where I do all my my own comic creation stuff, and just look for Florimonte. You'll be able to find me.
See Michael Lanning.
See Michael Lanning. Just look for me on Facebook. That's the best place to catch me. I have a Twitter, but I think I have 5 followers. So Facebook is probably the best place to be. So.
Dedicated followers.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Wait, how many people are in Silverline again? but yeah, Facebook's probably the best place to catch me right now.
All right. Dan, what do you got?
If you want to look up the comic I was talking about that I self-published a couple years back, it's What Is File 13, and that's on Twitter and Facebook. And you can find I'm on Facebook too. Daniel posts, like I think I am there. So yeah, if you want to look for me, that's where you can find me.
All right, thank you, sir. And Alex?
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Most likely, you could just type in Alex Gallimore. The last name is Gallimore. I don't think there's another artist under the name, so if you type that in on any of those, you should find me pretty easily.
Excellent. Well, interweb world, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. Thank you for commenting and questioning. We've got our Kickstarter campaigns coming up. We would love for you to follow, share, support us, support indie comics, and we appreciate everything you do to support Silverline and all the indie comics world. Thank you all, and good night.
Good